If someone would have told me a month ago that I was gonna have a recipe for ham and split pea soup, I would have said, no way. I can't stand the texture. But guess what? I put a few Louise twist on this and it is excellent. Welcome to The Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today's recipe is a super easy ham and split pea soup that we're gonna make in the pressure cooker. Of course, you could make it on the stove and you can make it in the slow cooker different ways. But today we're gonna make it really fast and really easy and use the Ninja Foodi 6.5 quart. And I'm gonna just use pressure cook, so any pressure cooker will work. All right, let's get right into it because this is so super easy. First thing I'm gonna add in is 2 tablespoons of salted butter. The butter's completely optional. You don't have to add it if you don't want the added fat. But I like to add it in because it starts to get everything else going and moves things along a little faster in my experience. So turn the Ninja Foodi on, sear saute on high, start to let the butter melt a little bit, and then let's talk about the next addition, which is bacon. And this is why the butter is really optional. So you could use either or both, okay? I choose to use both. The bacon is an amazing addition, and it's a certain kind of bacon. It's peppercorn bacon, thick cut. I'm using 4 slices, which weighed out at about 7 ounces. And it really adds an amazing flavor to this, especially if you don't have a ham bone, okay? But even if you do, I would still add it in because it's great. Now, the texture of bacon when it's pressure cooked is not gonna be crispy. So some people might have an aversion to that. And I understand, I used to too, but in this soup, it's good. But if you don't want to leave it in, okay, because it's gonna be fully cooked, but it's not gonna be crispy, then leave your pieces whole and just throw them in so you can take them out at the end, okay? But I happen to like them to stay in the soup. Now, if you couldn't find peppercorn bacon, don't worry about it. Just get another type of bacon that you love and use about 7 to 8 ounces of it and either leave it whole or chop it up. It's going to give a little bit of smoky flavor. And of course, the peppercorn bacon gives a little peppery flavor. So if you're gonna skip that, you might need to add in some pepper to the recipe to sort of balance everything out. All right, so the vegetables. Now this is one of the things that I never liked about ham and split pea soup. All the textures seem to be the same, no matter where I got it, no matter how many times I tried to make it myself, because I like all the ingredients. So it didn't make sense that I didn't like the soup. But I figured out it was just the texture. I just could not get past the texture all being uniform. So I made some changes. This is the first change. And I cut my vegetables fairly big. You want them about 1 to 1.5 inches. And I use a cup of celery, a cup of carrots, and a cup of onions. All of them are cut fairly big, okay? This helps them hold their texture a little bit, especially the carrots. And that way you have a little bit of texture difference in the soup, which I think is super important. How many stalks and how many carrots? It's gonna depend on the size, okay? Usually between 4 and 6 will give you a cup of large chunks. So I hear this sizzling. Let's give it a little bit of a stir around. We do not have to render the bacon completely. It's not gonna matter. And that's why I add the butter in. I just prefer to do it this way. So add in your vegetables. Give everything a little stir. Now, it doesn't matter how long you go here with your vegetables. In fact, I would not go longer than just a few minutes. You don't need to get them brown or anything like that, okay? We're just trying to render some of the fat out and get the vegetables just kind of started a little bit. Now we're gonna add in our seasonings, and there's only 2 of them because remember, we got the pepper already covered with the bacon. 1 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt or kosher salt's fine, and 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme leaves. Oh, and I almost forgot, 2 bay leaves. Give it a nice stir. And now, the ingredient that made this soup perfect. 1/2 cup of a white Riesling wine. Let me just tell you, it is amazing. Now, can you leave it out? Of course you can. Do most ham and split pea soups have wine in them? Not that I saw. However, it cuts the richness just a little bit, adds that acid component that I think the soup really needs, and it turns out amazingly delicious. So a half of a cup going right in. We'll use that to deglaze the pot. So if any of that bacon, got stuck on the bottom or anything, we'll loosen that up. And now we'll add in the ham. You can use any kind of ham that you want. You can use between 2 and 3 cups. You could add more, you could add less, whatever you have, This is one of those soups that you can make with leftover ham, and it's amazingly delicious, at least my version is. And so use as much as you have, right? If you have 3 cups, use 3 cups. If you have 4 cups and you need to use it all up, use 4 cups. It's not gonna matter in the soup. Same thing with the vegetables. If you're a little shy, don't have a full cup, don't worry about it. It's gonna be absolutely fine. It doesn't even matter what kind of ham you use, okay? So this is my copycat honey baked ham with a sugar crust, right? And believe it or not, the soup did not end up sweet at all. I think that wine helps a little bit too. All right, so we're just gonna dump the ham in. And I have some of the ham in pretty big chunks and some a little bit smaller. How you cut it is completely up to you. Give that a nice stir around. Now, if you have a leftover ham bone and you want to throw it in right now. I've made the soup both ways, with and without. They were both equally delicious. I did not see any difference in the flavor. Next thing that goes in are the split peas. You can't have ham and split pea soup without the split peas. So this is 1 pound or about 2 cups, and I've rinsed them and sorted them. So any like little sticks or anything like that, I've removed those. And now we can pour those in. And they're kind of a little sticky here because they were rinsed. Now, if you rinse them and they're clumpy, break them up. You don't want them in one big clump in your soup. All right, now we're just gonna move this around. All right, now for the liquid. I am using 6 cups of chicken stock or chicken broth. You could use ham broth or ham stock. That would probably even be better. But I wanted to make this recipe so that if you didn't have a ham bone, you didn't have ham stock, you could make it. And it turns out absolutely delicious with the chicken stock. So we're gonna pour that in. 6 cups is what you need. And your pot at 6.5 quart pressure cooker is going to be almost to the max fill line. So you cannot double this recipe in a 6.5 quart. And even in an 8 quart, I would only recommend that you would go at the most 1.5 times, if that really. So I would keep this as a single recipe. All right, let's go under pressure because that's all there is to it. So make sure your valve is to the seal position. I'm gonna set up for pressure cooking by moving my slider over, and it defaults to high pressure. That's what we want. 10 minutes is what we want. And we're gonna hit start. Now it's gonna take somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes for the pot to come to pressure because everything's not really that warm in there. We didn't saute long enough. We didn't get that liquid boiling. So the timing in this recipe is based on that. If you're one of those people that likes to add in hot liquid to get things moving along a little bit, you may want to go up to 11 or 12 minutes of pressure cook time. When the time is up, we will do a 10-minute natural release, and then we will open up the lid and give our soup a taste. Once all the pressure is released, you can go ahead and open up the lid. Do this very carefully because it's going to be very steamy and the inside contents are going to be still boiling and bubbling, okay? The first thing I like to do is try to find those bay leaves and fish those out. So I see one right here. And when you first look at it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's soupy. It's not, trust me. It's not gonna be soupy. I don't see the other bay leaf right this minute, so let me give it a stir. So your peas will be kind of down at the bottom here a little bit. All right, there's that other bay leaf. Let me grab it. Take that out. All right, now give it a nice stir. The first thing you're gonna see is that, oh, that's not as thick as I like it. please do not be tempted to make the recipe with less liquid. I mean, you could technically go down to 5 cups, but it is going to be so super thick when you go to serve it the next day. So if you're going to get rid of it all in one day, you could probably go down to 5 cups. But if you're going to have leftovers, you definitely want it to be a little bit on the liquidy side, okay? All right, there's no need to puree or anything like that. All the peas are nicely broken up. There are a few that you can still see the definition of, which I happen to love. If you want them totally dissolved, increase your pressure cook time to 12 minutes with a 10-minute natural release, and it'll be fine. Now, what I recommend is letting the soup sit for 5 to 10 minutes. After you give it a nice stir, it's gonna start to really thicken up, and then we'll dish it out. All right, there we go. Now, I had some celery that had like the inner leaves to it, and they make a perfect little garnish. I also know that some people put croutons on top of theirs, okay? And that's perfectly fine. I don't have any croutons, so I'm gonna skip that today. Now, if you didn't wanna use the celery leaves as a garnish, but you had them, you could also just dump them right in at the end here and stir them into your soup. And it just gives another interest to the soup, because let's face it, ham and split pea soup is not attractive to look at, right? It's kind of sludgy looking. So anything I can do to make it a little bit prettier is what I'm gonna do. You can see the vegetables were very big, and that is what I like, okay? If you don't want them that big, cut them smaller, but they're going to be a lot softer, so your textures are gonna change. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. How does it taste? Oh my gosh. Like, I cannot tell you how shocked I am that I'm eating and enjoying ham and split pea soup. Wow. This is amazing. The perfect texture on the carrots. This is just so exciting to me. So I really hope that whether you are a ham and split pea lover or hater like I was, that you give this recipe a try, because it is simply amazing.